let's move on to the next. Did everybody get a chance to review the minutes of the last meeting? And if so,
I didn't get them.
I don't think there was none.
I didn't get an agenda either.
We didn't get anything.
well, isn't that interesting? Because I sent stuff last Friday and it apparently didn't go. So let's not do that. We'll do that next time. And I apologize. I don't know what happened. It's probably stuck somewhere in my drafts.
We did send minutes. So,
I thought I sent them, but that's probably my error. And I will resend them for the next meeting. Okay, so, subcommittee updates. The subcommittee that is doing the stakeholder interviews is continuing on. I think our aim is to try to finish them up this week. So, stay tuned on that. It's been a challenge of trying to get people scheduled and then find time to meet with folks and then write it up. And then we will be consolidating the input and sharing with you what we can on that. Jess, you want to?
yes, 2 updates. The first one is for the communication subcommittee. Now that the website is in a great place, you'll notice on there, we want to continue to have summaries of our meetings for the general public when they go to the website to be able to kind of get a quick synopsis of, what occurred, very short and sweet. So during the meeting, Russell, Nikki, and I will be simultaneously trying to, as important decisions or things happen, write them down so that at the end of every meeting, the whole committee can take a look at what we jotted down and all agree, like, yes, this information looks good, we captured it correctly, accurately. So then we can update the website on a rolling basis. So we'll do that at the end of each meeting. And questions about that? Okay. And then, as we discussed a couple meetings ago, we are going to start a fresh Facebook page so people don't get confused with the old one. But before we launch that, we also wanted to work on a little bit of content to post there so that we don't just like go live with this page and then nothing on it. And so our plan going forward, after we have kind of the initial post, is the subcommittee will be developing the content with approval from the chair and then posting it live. But for the initial one, we wanted to review it with a larger committee because it's really a summary of what the committee is, what we're aiming to do, what we're charged for in a very easy to digest way. So I'll share that on screen for everybody to take a look. But you will, this should give you an idea of like some of the content we will. Oops, here we go. Okay.
I just go back up. You can't, it's like can you go back a slide or no?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
That's fine.
Meeting surveys. Okay. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. And then we have the timeline. We have our mission. We have a note on the fact that, there was a prior committee. So
What was not a stack, I think it was 1 page.
it's a little hyperbole. Yeah. Obviously, like why to ensure our government is effective, transparent, and accountable, and then a little bit about like how it was formed when we've been meeting since July. Yeah, that's kind of the idea. We'll have like the intro, hi, meet us, and then from there, it will be likely much less information, quick hit things like we have a survey coming out, or maybe a super quick summary of like, this is what we just presented at town meeting, like really just kind of another information source. At the end of the day, everything we post though will be driving back to the website so that the source, as we discussed, the source of truth is always the website.
I think if I could add, I would imagine we would add a little, I don't know if there's music over the background. I didn't.
There's not.
Yeah,
We
so
can.
I'm thinking like a little bit of stock music and maybe a voiceover as well, just to make it just like universally accessible and interesting. I'm happy to do the voiceover too, just if you want.
It'd be lovely. I hate hearing my own voice.
I'm so used to it.
That's it for us.
Okay, great. And if anybody has any comments, make sure you get them back to Jess so share with the community. Okay, takes care of that. Pat, I think you're up.
There's one more. I think you were also going to talk about meeting dates for.
Oh, right. So, thank you. So we're coming up in a tough time of year now. So if we're looking at our calendar for November, the next meeting that we have on the docket is for the 25th. We already talked about that, and people, I think, thought that was fine to continue on with that one. December gets a little trickier because of the holidays, and there are a number of various holidays. I'm thinking maybe we do one meeting in December and just keep it at the meeting for December 9th. And then cancel the one that we would have had on the 23rd. Can I have a motion to do that?
Motion to, in December, only have our meeting on December 9th and cancel the December 23rd meeting.
Okay. So Corey? You okay with that?
Favor of that. It would be tough to do too.
Okay, so that's a yes. Okay. Timothy? Bill? Steve? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes?
Yes.
Me, yes. Okay, so that's good. So you feel free to cancel that meeting on the 23rd. Okay. Thank you. And thanks, Pat. Now you're up.
Fantastic. So tonight we're going to continue. We left off. And then if we finish Article 2, we're going to do a little bit of an introduction into the next section, which would be the executive branch, and talk about what we're going to be talking about next. We'll save this presentation for after that. I think I also gave you the proposed charter. If we can pull that up. No, that's something else. That's a surprise.
That's a part of you.
Exactly. If you don't have it, I can, we can, both of us have our papers with us. I just started this section with where we're at, where we left off. My goal, rather than go back and talk about the things we've already talked about a couple of times, we're going to start where we left off, finish off this article, and at some point, we can revisit the exact details. But what I'd really love to have, is more of a substantive conversation about things that, we just want to make sure that you're understanding. Where we left off was 211, section F, which happens to be the top of this page here. This was in the section that had to deal with town meeting and just some general rules about it. And basically, F just indicates that any Any registered voter or taxpayer shall from time to time, as may, subject to rules, have a right to speak but not to vote at meetings. This is directly from your original special act. So, unless you have passed right by this, this seems to be the general rule that we have right now.
So, there's, an issue has come up, about, residents coming and wanting to speak and then not being able to speak because of,
The question.
somebody moves the question and then they're not allowed to speak. Now, is there anything that we can do in the course of putting this all together that would somehow allow people, residents, to speak, even though there's no further debate on the part of town meeting? Because this is something that I think many of us have heard about from people that they didn't like the fact that remove the question could make it so that people didn't actually get to participate after they sat through a whole meeting listening to things and wanting to participate. So,
And this is specifically at town meeting, people have had those comments. So as this mentioned, subject to such rules as may be time be established, I think that would probably be an issue that you might want to include in the bylaws with respect to your rule. Certain public participation can have time, place, manner restrictions. You can, as a body, you may want to decide when, where, and how long.
No, we will not have public participation
Um,
because that changes the rules that apply to town meeting, makes it an open meeting. A meeting is not an open meeting. We don't follow open meeting law.
Right.
We have to-
Well, this is what's in your special act now. And this is in many special acts and charters regarding town meeting. Basically, oftentimes you'll have experts, you'll have other people who are involved in this coming up and wanting to speak. So if this is an area that you want to talk about changing and excluding allowing this right to speak at town meeting, we can talk about that. Or you can talk about making some, putting it in the bylaws.
Point of clarification. Are you talking about section G here, or are you referring to something else?
We're at that section. We're at
Thank you.
Where it says any taxpayer has the right to speak.
any voter
or taxpayer.
Sorry, any voter.
Yeah. To speak.
So
not-
Subject to the rules that
Right.
That's made from time to time to be established.
I would suggest we leave it as is in this.
Mhm.
And that if we wish to address this, we do it somehow in a bylaw.
Or in the regulations, right? Isn't there?
Yeah, they're pretty much all in the bylaws. We have very few standalone rules. What the bylaw says is that people can speak after town meeting members and beyond.
And that does raise, the concern if somebody does move the question. But that can be, that's what happens. That's what happens to town meeting members as well, who would still like to speak.
Is it not though that, and correct me because I'm not a Robert's Rules expert, but isn't it that debate ceases once somebody has moved the question?
Debate ceases and we will move forward.
So there's no latitude for people to continue.
What are other
I
towns?
answered that I, as a town meeting member, can say, one of my constituents, Mrs. So-and-so, has asked me to state such and such, and I'm sure the moderator will allow me to say it.
Not after the questions move.
Oh, not after questions.
Yeah, that's what I was asking, if there's latitude for like debate stops, but residents could still speak if they want to, or is it not?
So I could say something and say, and that was asked by Mrs. So-and-so, to say, and then, like, okay,
But don't preface it with so-and-so.
so I would conclude her. That's it. So just so that I understand, there is language
in our special acts that say that a voter or taxpayer may be able to, as from time to time, in compliance with rules that are established, have a right to speak. It sounds like there are rules that have been established by town meeting that are currently in bylaw
Correct.
that state that public members speak after town meeting members have decided there's no more speaking that they want to do.
Correct.
And it is also the case that because you're following Robert's Rules of Order, which is elsewhere in your bylaws that I've seen, you, at any moment, someone can motion to end debate, and if that passes, debate's over, and it doesn't matter who was speaking or who was next, that's the end of debate.
How it works.
Okay, so if I assimilate all that right, if we intend for something to want to be different to ensure that the public gets some effort to speak, I would suggest it's not necessarily something that would be in charter language, but maybe it would be a report recommendation for the town meeting to suggest some sort of a change in their bylaws as represented as a rule
Yes,
to help encourage people to speak.
or to allow people to speak.
I
We
mean,
we can debate that when it comes up.
right, because there's probably a reason that the rule was passed in the first place, I suspect, otherwise the body wouldn't pass it.
Well, the focus is supposed to be on the town meeting. Correct. And because they are representative of the other folks, and those other folks who wish to speak should also be speaking to the town meeting. First. That's how representative the body operates.
Okay, so we'll leave this as a recommendation that we take a look at the bylaw relative to this and then discuss whether that's something that should be addressed, or if so, how it should be addressed.
Any other remarks on that section from the fund? The next section is taken from the language,
We're still
can
at G, right?
you go up a little back to G? Right. Town meetings accessible to those remotely versus electronic with a maximum of 15 members attending remotely. This is specifically the language that was approved at May 2025 town meeting, which is being sent to change your current special act to allow. So I've used that exact same language so that we wouldn't, so I imagine you all spent time on crafting that language. The only thing I added at the end was including standing votes taken pursuant to section 211E. Earlier and I guess, actually it's later. Where in 211E, is the procedural part we talked about, except on procedural matters, voting shall be by standing vote. And so I just added in here that there needs to be an electronic version of what is a standing. Members who are attending remotely, their standing votes have to be recorded as well, and leaving that open with the
Is that like a literal thing? Yeah, I mean, the way you have this written is that a literal standing votes for that group.
Right, and that's the language you have right now, so we're incorporating that. Do you mean in G, where I say including standing votes?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Right, I just wanted to make sure that, that these votes, I wanted to reference the other one, we can leave the language out if you think it's implied. I just took a look at that and said, I just want, when we had standing votes, the part relating to standing votes is very literal about how it has to be done by standing vote. And so recognizing that that's not an option in this, I wanted to make sure that this also included the standing. That's why.
Maybe I should remember this one last time, but I don't. when we, at town meeting, the first thing we do is we take a vote not to do standing votes and to do raising hands. That should be somehow either, because if we're saying it has to be a standing vote, we actually don't. We have the ability to make the standing vote into a raising of hands. So
We decided to keep it that way and the way it is.
Right, when the body in the moment decides to pass that rule for the evening, then it applies. So this language wouldn't change any of that at all. This language is making, the extra red language is explicitly making sure that someone is not denied the right to participate in a standing vote just because they're remote.
Yeah.
The fact that whether that standing vote then becomes a raise your hand vote is arguably, maybe that never happens again, or maybe it happens at every meeting, but that's sort of for the meeting to decide in the moment.
The standing votes are still taken, even though we do that at the beginning.
the standing votes are only taken though if there is a challenge to it.
Correct. So this is saying,
Comment is not clear to the moderator.
so this is saying in the case that a standing vote is taken, you must make
No, I
sure
think-
virtual
Probably
people
what
are.
some language in there that's.
But you're wondering if
that's
we
the moderator.
was it E
Well, I just said,
to
E
make it clear.
seems very strict on this, and maybe I'm being too literal, but it says, except for on procedural matters, voting shall be by standing vote. And
So maybe we should add something to that saying unless standing vote is waived by the town meeting members.
because that's what we do,
Right.
right? I mean, we,
And even though the town meeting may have waived the standing vote, the moderator can call for it if
Yeah.
he needs
Right,
that to
right.
clarify the vote.
we need to have
Yeah, but
some authority,
the
don't we?
vote just doesn't really apply to them.
Yeah, I feel like the red language makes it more confusing and it's implied in their vote where applicable be reported.
The vote is being
My
recorded.
opinion.
It has to, per our bylaws, you can't vote in secret, so it has to be displayed, even though it doesn't say it there. So that everyone will see how the people on,
And maybe we should say that rather than the standing vote. I'm reacting to that for many reasons, not the least of which some of the people online can't stand. So, that
so you can't stand the people online?
But, you know, I had a bit of an issue when we were talking about that in E, and I know it was at the end of the meeting, and I probably just like gave up on it because it was the end of the meeting, but if what we do in town meeting is we don't have all voting by standing vote, we do vote in the beginning to have it by raising of hands. And then the moderator can call a standing vote if there's a question about numbers or any of the rest of it, or if there's a challenge for a roll call, right? Well, no, roll call, we just have out names, but it feels to me like E needs to have something in it, Pat, like you just said, where a standing vote can be waived with a majority vote of the town meeting members, which is what I think Bill does.
Well, we wanted to put that in there. We wanted to say like, oh, Bill can, or somebody can make a call that we don't have a standing vote. What I would up to here is you would say we're doing it by hand.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, like everything stays the same. The only reason to change it would be if you change it, you say like, it's no longer a vote, it's now by raising of hands.
What if we said,
Otherwise, the procedure stays the same.
Well, except for this is not saying that there is a procedure of actually waiving the standing vote.
Right, because it's in the bylaws. It doesn't have to say.
But if that's what we're doing and we're putting it, I mean, there's sometimes you don't need to go to the bylaw, which would be just as easy just to have how it happens here. It's not necessarily locking us into anything that we don't want to get locked into. It just reflects basically how meetings actually run.
Can I clarify? What you're trying to, one, there's like three things that are all being talked about. Let's pick one of them. One question is literally a standing vote, whether people are asked to stand in order to represent their vote.
Mhm.
I think if I remember, so the question that you're proposing, without necessarily wording it this way, is that should we be changing the default language in the charter to say it is not by standing vote, it is by raising of hands?
You know, I'm saying it is standing vote unless,
You don't have to give it to them.
Yeah,
but just say what,
That's the moderator's job.
What?
My concern- I'm sorry. I'm not sure if town meeting can waive something that's required by a charter.
Right, so,
So don't put it in the charter.
So we either include language unless standing vote is waived, or we change the language to voting shall be by visible means such as standing or waving or raising. hand.
yes, I like that.
I think I know that he had mentioned that a potential reason why standing was explicitly called out was that it was more difficult to cheat in voting
Yeah.
by actually physically standing. I'm curious if
Right, it's
is standing vote like,
Easier just to put your hand down.
is standing vote like old timey Massachusetts language, or like this is what?
It's what people do in most places. Most people don't have a way to, most people don't allow you to do it this way.
I also just get nervous too about including specific language about how people are voting, because we could eventually have an electronic voting system that negates all of that. And then
Well,
are we gonna go back to the charter?
Yeah,
We'll have to.
yeah, well, we're gonna have to anyhow.
Really? Okay. All right.
Well, for that.
The other problem with standing up is as soon as you stand up, the seat folds and everything you have just fell off.
It is definitely problematic physically, but as was mentioned, the part of it is if they have a revote.
Yeah.
Or a recount, it's very easy to put your hand down. It's harder to visibly, if you sit down, it's more obvious that you've changed.
Let me think a little broadly. If you're saying like standing vote is the colloquial language, it's what people do, there's a reason it's chosen as a thing and not chosen as hand vote. This meeting could be held in a different room with a different set of people. Like there's some other circumstances that could happen. They could vote to change it or not during that session, but all of that shouldn't matter from the standpoint of like, as the firmest level of language, what is it that we're trying to make sure is communicated? If it turns out it's standing vote so that that's well understood for legal parlance, then maybe we live with that and we
What
just
Scott said, if we stay in standing, what she said was if we have standing vote, then the town meeting cannot waive it. It's gotta be standing vote all the time.
But-
So I'm saying if that's not the way, I don't believe that, I mean, that's not the way we've operated since I've been on town meeting. I don't believe it's maybe the most efficient way, given the logistics of where we are and how it all works. So I think the alternative language that Pat suggested, I don't know, works kind of for me, but
And can you repeat what you said? 'Cause I don't-
I'm looking to see if there's another way of wording it that someone else has used it, but I think I said, except on procedural matters, voting shall be by visible means such as standing or raising hands. But if the important part of this is, but if seven or more shall doubt the vote, the important part is then a roll call.
Yeah.
The first part of the phrase, if we want to say something other than standing vote, it's a good idea to say that here in the charter, just to make sure that there's no question further on, whether let's do it by,
Back in section.
yeah, back in section. And then, as you said, if you think it's more confusing, we'll just take the red language out of section G.
Yeah, it's just a different way of tallying votes when you're online. It's just different,
It absolutely is different.
When I have other comments about G.
well, I mean, let's just see if we're all okay with E with the proposed language that Pat.
Think by visible means versus specificity of standing.
Yeah, okay.
You want to put something in there at the discretion of the moderator?
I thought about that too. Is that the way to word it?
So if we get ourselves tangled up, the moderator can straighten it up.
Yeah. Okay. All right, then, if we're all, okay, is there anybody opposed to that? Okay, let's move on then, great, thank you.
Yeah, so in G, I worry or wonder about putting an exact number of folks who can attend remotely. I know that language was very specifically negotiated by town meeting. I also know that this has never happened or not happened yet in this form. And it could be decided that it's fine for a third of the members to attend remotely, or it could be decided that 15 is too many to attend remotely, we can make it 5 or something like that. And wouldn't really want to have to go back to the state to get permission to change that number.
So your concern is that this language is in firmer.
Yeah, I would just refer back to the bylaw. Yeah, pursuant to the bylaw.
Was it done as a special act or was it done as a,
It was done as a special act,
so it has to go back to legislature?
so it's going to, yes.
Well,
But the question is,
not
what,
if you put it in the charter different.
right, if you put it in the charter, you know, it's gonna,
The way we want it.
the way you want it, you can do that.
Is this special? I know it's a home rule different than special. act.
So, it's a home rule special,
It's amendment.
um, it's a home rule. amendment.
So if we're gonna change it, if it's gonna need the same level of scrutiny.
But then if we, because town meeting went back and forth a lot on the number of members, is there a chance then town meeting will not approve this charter simply because we didn't have the specificity of 15 votes?
Is there a way that we can imply that the number is 15 unless altered by town meeting bylaw? And then that way it starts as 15 where they left it, but if they want to alter it, they can alter it.
I doubt that would fly legally.
I don't think it's a good idea to allow a bylaw to change
Yeah, okay.
what the charter says. You know, if you're, there is a concern that, you know, people worked hard on this language and I understand there were a lot of discussions
Mhm,
about it.
mhm.
And so maybe that's one of those things that we don't know if it's broke to fix yet. On the other hand, you know, to say with a maximum number of members as determined by bylaw, we could change the language that way.
I don't feel super strongly about it. I just always worry about sort of restricting things and being more prescriptive than needed. Because it's just, it's a process and a long process to get things changed.
Well, also, how does it work? So there's 126 members of town meeting who decides who's going to be remote on any given meeting.
So isn't it based on like,
First
yeah,
come, first served.
Yeah. And then you just have to email.
Just out, you're just not.
And then you just, anybody after that misses the meeting shows up.
And I
And
think,
that's not including people who are ADA, by the way. That's
Right.
anybody with ADA.
15
automatic.
is in addition to any ADA.
Yes.
And ADA trumps everything, so it doesn't even have to be in here.
Right, so if it's 15 in addition to those who qualify. I know, but I mean, that's a practical matter. That's what it's communicate. So the question really is, do we want to put the number in here? And if we don't put the number in here, then we definitely need a bylaw that's going to be an addendum to this.
yeah. Because otherwise town meeting will say you are changing what we
Right.
voted on.
And it can't be, let's have a committee study a bylaw. It means the bylaw has to be part of this commission.
So didn't you just say it might be a bad idea to have a bylaw that alters the number?
there's a difference between saying that the bylaw would waive the charter than by leaving it completely open and saying, for the maximum number determined by bylaw. This is really a new kind of
Right.
odd, I don't think you're going to see a lot of language in this. This is really a new idea to have just a few people participate remotely. And it's still, you know, it was passed here. I don't know whether, you know, what the approval is going to look like in the legislature. The whole idea of having most people present in person is because of the nature of town meeting and the idea that everyone comes, presents their ideas, has these discussions, and that it's an open, vital body having this discussion. So it's, you know, that's the argument that weighs against having completely remote all the time. On the other hand, there may be a time the legislature is always considering suggestions that there be fully removed.
And there was a lot of discussion about that topic and a lot of strong feeling on not to go in that direction, which is why 15, I think, was about as max as we could possibly get it. And
15 was throwing a bone to people who were Golden Glance was a good example of someone who travels a lot for business and would want to still be able to participate, but he's out of town. So, okay, that's reasonable.
Oh, sorry.
But, so that's that's, yeah, and there's always for someone who doesn't have a babysitter or whatever.
Yeah, any caregiver responsibility.
Yeah, I think that by demanding in person, we are eliminating a certain segment of our society, population, who just for a variety of reasons, young kids, just included them from attending. I don't worry about that. I'll be representative if we eliminate a certain segment of our population.
That debate aside, I think my opinion on this is there was obviously a lot of thought and care that went into it. And then once that was reached, it's now going to a state that may or may not change it. I think we shouldn't change it at all. We should leave it be. And if the state changes it, they'll change it. And if the town wants to change it, yes, it'll be slightly annoying to go through charter change, but might not be the only thing, who knows? But at that point, they could revisit making the language more flexible and they'll be able to do it.
And I guess I'll point out that we haven't heard back from the legislature on what we've submitted. So there's
So in a year, we might have to change this anyway.
so we might be hearing back from them at some point. So, and at that time, we will probably have to revisit this.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm suggesting that it's not split too much at this point. That we'll wait and see what the legislature comes back, what the AG comes back and says, whether we accept it. And then we can go for it. I wouldn't be surprised if they can. We don't allow it.
Okay, so I think what we're saying, which is what Russ just said,
The motion to do nothing.
to leave it as worded, do not add that little pink sentence at the end, and we'll just leave it as is and move on. Right? Alrighty, okay, let's move on.
The next section, if you want to scroll up a little, section 212 all the way to the top, standing committees. Thank you. This is the language that you have now. The town meeting shall, by bylaw, provide for the establishment of standing committees, the majority of the members of which shall be composed of persons elected to town meeting. When earlier in our discussion, in another section, we had talked about the fact that you were interested in making sure that all standing committee members shall be residents of the town of Burlington for the duration of their terms. So I just I added a sentence to the top to make it clear that that they must be elected to town meeting at the time of appointment or reappointment, unless otherwise specified by general law, bylaw, or this charter. All standing committee members shall be residents of the town of Burlington for the durations of their terms. So the the general rule is that they have to be residents of the town of Burlington for the duration of the terms. There are some standing committees that you may change the bylaw. You might want to include, say, a staff member on a committee. And those staff members might not be residents. So that's why we leave this open in general for general law might say you need to have an appointed person from this committee on here. So we've left it open so that general law or bylaw can change this. And I know we just had that discussion about what's better for this, but I think this sets that in general, just like majority of members of which have to be elected to town meeting, others have to be.
So does this change anything we're doing or just solidify?
I think it's what you're doing, but I know there was discussion earlier about it wasn't clear whether you had to be residents of the town for the duration of their term. Because we know that at least half have to be town meeting members, and we know they're residents, and we know they're voters, but we don't know what the other half.
When I read that, I started to unravel it to be the duration of the term applies to the town meeting member term or the committee appointment term, because some of the people potentially on a committee might not be town meeting members, and therefore they only have one term, but others it's ambiguous.
This is what their term was.
So of their committee. The committee, I'll add committee term, if that makes it more clear. Yeah. No, I appreciate it.
There is one committee we have that requires now all of them.
This still works. This is.
And in the earlier stuff, I don't remember, we glanced through other things or maybe in a slideshow. Each committee, when it's defined, indicates if there are members that are required that are not residents or that are,
Right.
When this process is, we talk about committees, right? And under boards and
These
committees.
are
it would-
standing committees as opposed to appointed. But these are, this is with respect to the committees, the town meeting standing
Okay.
committees. So, and we talked about those aren't going to be spelled out in the charter.
Okay, so
Um,
some of the feedback that, and, you know, just that through some of the interviews that I've had, and I don't know what others can comment, are about the current committees not necessarily abiding by what the bylaw specifies their charter to be. I hate to use the word charter, but you know what I mean. And they're kind of going outside or around some of their assigned duties in terms of what their responsibilities are.
Exceeding their authority is what you're saying.
Or maybe exceeding their authority or just not, they're kind of making up their own, this is what I think we should be doing and doing it rather than following what the bylaw says they're doing, they should be doing. And there doesn't seem to be much, and some committees are not effective and other committees are, but there's no checks and balances on what's going on. And that's feedback I'm getting, and I don't know how or where we deal with it, other than it'll show up on comments. But, and I don't know whether that is, I don't know what other towns do with standing committees, that there's an expectation that whatever the bylaw is that specifies what their role is and what they're supposed to be doing, that they actually follow it. I'm not sure how you get at that or if you get at that, but it's not working.
Yeah, so some sort of supervisory, like,
Well, either that or it's some, there's got to be something where there's some accountability on the part of the committees to actually be doing what they're supposed to be doing. I guess that's what I'm saying. And there doesn't feel to be anything that is a forcing mechanism for that accountability. They don't really report to anybody.
Well, if the committee's going beyond its scope, it's either intruding into somebody else's and somebody else is complaining, or they're doing something that's not otherwise covered.
Or, right, I mean, or other things. I mean, it could be, it can plays out in, I think, different ways. I don't know if there's a rule in the charter for that, but,
Is there a mechanism for removing standing committee members?
or even,
Not to be appointed.
or even
Can you remove?
evaluating the committee, the standing committees. There's no provision for evaluating whether a committee should even exist.
yeah.
That's a little.
It's like, yeah, that sounds like not charter territory to me. It sounds like recommendations territory.
Or like legal philosophy, right? Like if a group, like kind of like what Jack was saying, if some group impinged on rights of someone else, it is incumbent upon the person who was harmed to bring suit or
Yeah.
complaint, right?
That's easy.
So now if we're saying the committee doesn't do a good job, they're ineffective because they're having coffee the whole time or something, then it raises the specter of, can the body who is in charge of the committee is reporting to a body, can they disband the committee and reform it? Can they expunge members from it? Something like
I
that.
mean, I was thinking, is there something you say that all committees you have to get recertified after, 3 years. I don't know. I'm making it up. I'm just saying, it feels to me that once a committee is formed, there's no oversight and there's nothing that goes back and says, do we even need this committee? I mean, we saw one committee, what was it,
Facilities?
the facilities committee that hasn't existed for 10 years or 12 years.
And we need one.
But it's not there, right? And there's no provision anywhere to go back and look and see if the committees we have are the committees we need. So is there a
So that's a
provision?
different issue though than an ineffective committee or a committee that's going out.
Well, ineffective would come up during that kind of review.
What do other towns do? Do other towns have a way of supervising or?
Or having a 3-year life renewal, like all committees, and this is not finance committee or ways and means, this is like all the standing committees have to be reestablished every X number of years. And then and then you have an opportunity to see,
Well, again, are you talking about the committee or the appointments of the individuals on the
the
committee?
committees themselves.
So that sounds like a thing that would be owned and managed by the group to which the committee like lives under. So like there's a bunch of committees here that are arguably, I guess they're part of town meeting. Town moderator certainly appoints a bunch of
They're
them.
all those are all town meetings.
They're all town meetings.
This section is all town meetings. So
I know,
so it would be
Feeling it all.
upon the town moderator
I
to.
guess, yeah, since the town moderator is the person who appoints these things. But it doesn't feel like, I would not want the town moderator to be like, I get to decide every month if this committee gets to be here. or anything here.
No, and I don't think it should be a month. I think it's like,
Sorry, I didn't
it
mean-
should be like every 5 years or every 3 years or something. I think there needs to be a process somewhere in there, and maybe other towns do something where committees are rechartered or reestablished after
Well,
so many years.
you can do it 2 ways. You put an automatic sunset or expiry date on it, or you can say it shall be reconsidered at a particular date. And how long the town meeting debate whether people land use committee.
Would that be charter or would that be
How much
determined
of
when
the
the
evening will be
committee
spent
is?
on this?
If the committee,
Created.
like, let's say there's one here, the rules committee. Is the rules committee going to show up in this charter? I'm betting no. Because that's a committee established by the town meeting
There's
through its
only
bylaw.
There's only one committee that should show up in.
And that's
Probably the. Yeah, so all these other committees, it is incumbent upon the town meeting to deal with its own house. And so this is where maybe this ties into public comment. How would a public member say, what's going on with this committee? Why are we wasting time with it? Like, how would that happen?
Through a town meeting member.
Through a town meeting, there you go. So in theory, maybe it's not effective. The town meeting would be the ones to alter their own bylaw to nuke a committee that they don't want to have anymore, or create a committee that doesn't exist.
And if people are having problems with the committee, it'd be nice if they let the moderator.
Get a camera, don't tell me.
Well, I can try to intervene. I don't have any direct responsibility.
And you're not going to all the meetings either.
No.
Well, I think there's definitely, when we get the stakeholder input,
Good.
there are things in there that you're going to want to read, for sure. I just didn't know whether there's a precedent in some other town where on these committees, they maybe have a sunset clause, or they have some other provision, or whether they're just lifetime existing committees, and then you just,
Let's work how it works.
They just still no longer need it.
It does seem like it's a smart move that every time a committee is made, it should be made with a kill switch, so that if you want it, then you affirmatively reappoint it. Because that way you ensure that cruft gets cleaned up when people don't need it.
Well, I would say that most towns don't have that type of formal procedure. In your case, the standing committees are established by bylaw. So it would be, the bylaw would be where it would be a change in the bylaw that would require any sort of sunset provision, et cetera. Problem is, a lot of these are volunteer committees, and they're hard enough to staff. And I think that, this would be a good thing to have a recommendation, for, we recommend that, we take a look at these committees, and decide whether some of them need to be, have the bylaws changed or have them removed from the bylaw. But I mean, it's definitely, I would say it's probably not a charter level issue. But the existence of the committee is established in the bylaws, so any new committee would be through bylaw
Yes,
process.
okay.
Another sort of aspect of that is the mechanism to remove people from a committee. So if the moderator appoints them, and that is, I believe, in the charter, is there a means to remove them? Let's say barring, I mean, I don't know, if you go to the extreme, illegal conduct and something to some extreme versus the town meeting can elect to remove someone, I mean, that'd be pretty rough, but.
Would the chair,
Violating the open meeting law, that would be close.
can the chair of these committees, I mean, I get standing versus regular, but
Is that the case?
It should do what?
Can it-
remove somebody. no?
No, I don't think
It's
so.
already been appointed by me for a term.
So if you need to, there's a problem, somebody needs to contact you and say, Joe Smith,
Don't reappoint them.
Right, but can you remove?
can you remove? No, we can't.
Should, not you, should a theoretical moderator have that power, obviously attenuated by some sort of
We have to specify what the cause is,
There's a,
operate within that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's legal discussions that if you have the authority to appoint, it also means you have the authority to unappoint. But that is a very difficult road to go down,
It's a plain item.
because then.
Yeah, it's just one person.
Right,
Yeah, if-
I'd rather not the
if
one
you're talking
person.
about one person on a committee of seven.
Yeah, and let's even say, take this to a different extreme, again, theoretical. What if the town meeting, the populace, they said, we want all 7 of these members to be removed. Right, like, they want a committee to be dissolved and reformed. I don't know, that's extreme, but I'm thinking of the bigger case here where we have other situations where when people leave, other slots can get vacated and be filled. We have cases where I guess we don't have a lot of.
Well, I think we were going to talk about something like recall in part of our thing. So why don't we leave that, because that would probably be.
I guess the question to ask, is there a big problem where no?
I guess, and is there a problem that should go into the charter? Or should it be addressed with our bylaws where we define that?
Yeah, I was thinking having the and given that we have other pieces where we're talking about how many votes are required to ask for a hand raising vote. We're talking about how many votes are required by the populace in order to overturn a town meeting thing that's been passed. This might be the kind of, and later we'll get to a part where we're talking about potential recall thing, if that ever comes up or how, if we do that, I agree that this sort of falls in that vein of a moderator is been given powers. It would be good to understand the scope of wielding those and the limits of wielding.
So let's bring it back to the standing committee. I think where we are is we're going to make a recommendation. We're going to come back as a recommendation to look at committees in terms of their purpose, their relevance, their effectiveness, and that sort of thing.
We're recommending that the town meeting
Yes.
evaluate their committees.
Okay.
Are we gonna say within a certain period of time, or is just this one time reason?
I think,
Periodically.
well,
5 years.
Every
I think, yeah,
Periodically.
yeah, every. Would you say 3 years? Yeah, 3 years.
How many revisit their standing committees every 3 years to ensure accessibility, ultimately removal or updates would have to.
Just if I may comment, I think 3 years is a very short time.
Yeah.
I think by the time you pull a committee together to look at that and you finish with your recommendation, and it goes to a bylaw and the bylaw is changed, that 2 to 3 years are going to be acting. I think at least 5 years. But the thing is, the first time is the most important. And after the first time,
Yeah.
it's going to be easier.
Maybe what we say is, as
Revisit it. If they're still in the middle of it, they're not gonna be like, oh yeah, let's can it.
right, I mean, either that or we say, following this, along with the charter, we recommend that the subcommittees of town meeting, all the committees of town meeting be evaluated for relevance, effectiveness, all that, because I think there's some consolidation that could also happen in terms of subcommittees.
Talking about.
So that review could happen on the same cadence as the government review?
Well,
Okay.
it'd be a recommendation we would make to town meeting that would be a follow-up that should happen.
Great, so we all agree, part of our recommendation is to do the work the first time. Question is, how do we also ensure it happens every so often? We could put it on the same schedule as, there already is language in here about the government reviewing itself.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking, don't put a time frame. Just say, do it
Just say this
right
right.
after, and then see what happens. It may be that there's not that much that needs to change, or we know there's a facilities committee that needs to go by, right? But
No, it needs to actually do what it's supposed to
This.
do.
Not like a committee.
maybe that's a long range planning committee.
Yeah.
Not a facilities committee. So there are examples now of things that are not working that we need to address. And it's a bylaw and town meeting needs to do it. So it's not going to be a charter to this point. It's not going to be in here, but it will be a byproduct of this process.
But I do see I see an appeal in this language because we're explicitly talking about what are standing committees, what's their deal. Maybe there can be, some language that says from time to time or periodically, the town meeting shall assess its standing committees or, word the language, but you're putting it here so that everyone understands the standing committee is not eternal. It's meant to be by the town meeting and reevaluated through some periodic process that is a little vague, but the intent is there.
So you could say at least once every 10 years, at least once every 7 years. Town meeting will assess but I don't think you want to mandate 3 years is.
But I like them from time to time, kind of throwing it out there as big.
Which means maybe never.
It does, but at least there's an intent there. We can always have in our report an additional, you should do this, right?
And you address that.
Yeah, we have it in here for a recommendation for report.
Yeah, I guess the question is whether it makes sense for charter language to be that strong to indicate, forget the time part, but just to indicate that standing committees themselves should be reevaluated periodically by the town meeting. That's something
People are interested for their existence, for their purpose, for their structure.
Yes.
For all,
Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
for all of it.
For all three.
What do you think, Pat?
Yes, you could put language there. I also wanted to point out later in the charter, when we talk about general provisions, we'll have a recommendation that the charter be reviewed every 10 years. We usually have a recommendation saying that the bylaws are reviewed every 5 years. I'm wondering if because it's a bylaw review, if that's a good place to say, including bylaws, because it wouldn't just apply to this. You might be interested in the bylaws for other committees appointed, including that in a general bylaw review.
General bylaw review is such a general thing, it never happens. What I like about what Russ is suggesting is that it kind of puts it out there as an intent, and we should follow it up with a more specific recommendation, I think. But if it can go into the charter, the language that he had, like from time to time, that they should be reviewed for.
And
We did. Well,
here's another thing. If it's out there and it's vague, then who or what does and how does that happen? And we could just ignore it. So maybe explicitly the moderator's the one who's, it's maybe getting too detailed at this point, but the moderator's given power to basically appoint to these committees. maybe the moderator is the one who is responsible for ensuring that it gets reviewed every X years. Then at least there's a person who's got a duty explicitly stated. They don't have to do it alone, but they should ensure that it happens. Thoughts, concerns, hatred? Okay, hatred.
Don't want that on my list.
Yeah, and that's one of the concerns I have about putting language here is we're not assigning this to anyone. Where, you know, in the future language and later, we're gonna say select board or meeting or whoever will assign who is responsible for a bylaw review. You know, establishing a bylaw review.
What do other towns do? They say it's recommended that the charter be reviewed every 10 years. By whom?
It's usually very general because the select board is, gets to choose who we want on it, how many people, and that's going to be varied depending on,
So
How many
it's
people
say
know?
the direction of the select.
right, the direction of the select board. Yeah, and that's in the later bylaw will be at the direction of the select board. This will happen, although there won't be parameters on how many people on the committee, you know, that type of thing. So if you put that language in here about from time to time, standing committees should be evaluated, that's very passive. It doesn't say who's evaluated.
As directed by the moderator,
Yeah, at the direction of the
at the
moderator.
direction of the moderator.
And do you feel, Pat,
You
that
can vote no one. You can be like, "No."
And you
that
can-
that language should go here in A, or that it should go later on in the charter?
If you're just referring to the standing committees, it can easily go, but it is going to result in a bylaw change. So I was just pointing out that there will be other sections dealing. If that,
Maybe putting a cart before a horse at the moment, sounds like, if we add it here and then.
There are other places where we're gonna have bylaw
Here, what-
changes too.
when we finish, we can decide, oh, we're doing this, this, and this, let's put them all together here.
Yeah.
This is just about getting through the language once, and then as we work through it, we'll be going back and making changes. But if you want me to kind of put some language like we discussed in this section, we can do that. And, you know, it will be,
We'll see it again.
We'll see it again.
We'll talk about
Okay.
everything we talk about, unfortunately or fortunately, we'll be talking about again.
Okay.
Okay. So,
More specific you get in any one section, the chance you're running a conflict with another section. So you've got to be careful how specific you get.
and it's very difficult when you start counting up, okay, we have a regular general bylaw committee, we have a committee to establish this, we have a committee to review this. There's just a danger that you're not going to get enough. So we may choose.
So we'll appoint a committee to oversee committees.
Okay. Okay, next.
So, okay, so, this is general language that's in your special act. That is very valid to have in here. It's not necessarily, you know, if it's talking about fee, all articles requiring the expenditure of funds shall before enactment be referred to the Committee on Ways and Means for recommendation. That's what you're doing now. Scrolling down, such other committees as the meeting deems expedient shall also be created, and committee shall be assigned all articles that come under their subject matter of jurisdiction. They shall conduct open public hearings on matters and provide the public with opportunity to discuss their views. Committees established under these provisions shall consist of an odd number of persons appointed for fixed terms. So it's just the general rules for putting together committees.
Just a point of clarification or editing,
Yep.
on B, the second line, should it say ways and means? Or is that some,
I didn't hear that.
but on the second line of B, committee on ways. and means.
Way,
Ways and means.
plural.
Yeah,
Okay,
I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing something.
no, that's great. Thank you.
Massachusetts language.
Um,
B and C look great.
And I know, is this the part, I know that there was a discussion, and maybe is this the part where we want to talk about, I understand that there may have been some feedback that the Ways and Means Committee might be interested, or some people might be interested in going back to the original name of Finance Committee from Ways and Means Committee to, it's, you know, just to just to be more in line with, with
Other towns.
other towns, what the rules are. There's a finance committee section of the Mass Municipal Association, just to have people understand what a Ways and Means is, since it has a little different function than what might, it's totally up to you whether you want to open this up to discussion at this point. I'm just,
Is there a difference between finance committee and ways and means as far as scope of authority or anything?
there would be no, difference. It would just be, originally you called it the finance
Yeah,
committee.
when I moved it down, it was finance committee.
Right, and then they changed it to Ways and Means Committee. There's no difference. There are, there's no difference. It's just in the name. And
Do you know why it was changed?
I don't know why it was changed.
In memory?
When I was appointed to it, it was ways and means.
The fact of the matter is that there's very little wiggle room. I mean, it's not a Ways and Means Committee to the point where it doesn't control where the legislation goes and which legislation goes forward and what committees it goes to. It just does finance
Finance.
committee job. So,
And that's what's called for by the state law, right? Is a
Right.
finance committee, not a ways and
And
means.
that's what other towns call it. And I think that's the feedback that I had received from two of my interviews, were, why don't we just call it the finance committee? And I believe the ways and committee, the ways and means committee is going to be full on that. I think they feel like they want to be the finance committee because that's what they are. And that's what other towns know them as being. And so
It would be much
And-
more transparent. sort of,
and it'd be more transparent, and then people who, residents know what it is, because they always are explaining what ways and means, because nobody understands what it is, but they understand finance committee, so.
This is a change we make in the charter.
It would be a change we'd make in the charter, to rename it into the finance committee, which again is more in line with other towns and what they're doing. And kind of calls it for what it does, as opposed to something.
From time to time, I hear reference to the financial team, which includes the chair and vice chair of ways and means, plus the treasurer, and a whole bunch of people, so that may have been some reason to stick
To
it.
separate it out.
Yeah.
Because it separates the appointed committee from the town employees that oversee finance.
I think they were
that's
saying,
in all towns.
yeah, I
Not
think
true.
somebody was saying something about in some presidential administration in the 1970s, President so-and-so was talking about ways and means. And I mean, it was like that kind of, like esoteric reasoning. I mean, that was way beyond my capability to, I wasn't even thinking about it.
No recollection.
So anyhow, that would be a recommendation that I preliminarily, would like to make, that we do that, subject to kind of confirming with the current committee that that is something that they would find helpful.
Yeah. Sure, sounds good.
Does that, have we, I'm sorry that I don't remember, have we already gotten past the part of the charter that lays out that there is a finance committee called Ways and Means?
And your charter is very, that your current special act, and the language we have, I actually was going to recommend kind of having a section that isn't in this, but maybe post a little bit about defining the finance committee.
Yeah.
And putting it in there. We haven't done that
Okay,
because we're using the language of your special act, and we wanted to see, make you understand what you currently have before we make changes. But I think it would be very easy to, even if you don't put in the numbers, there should be, well, you can't even do that. There shall be a finance committee, made of this many people chosen by the moderator for this length of term, staggered terms. We can put that in there.
I think we should.
And,
and then we would just change say finance committee instead of to be on Ways and Means.
correct.
Yeah.
And it would probably be in the
Yes, on the
section,
way.
And then we'll have a section on the finance committee.
right.
So,
And it's not going to spell out everything because we want to keep most of it in the bylaws, but I think that for
especially because it's,
finance committees traditionally put in the charter in a little bit more substantial of a way because they have statutory duties and duties in the budget process. So,
okay. So is everybody on board with doing that?
yes,
Yeah.
Okay, done.
Corey, do you hate it or love it?
Yep, I also support the change. Makes more sense.
So somebody is gonna check in with the finance.
Yeah, I mean, let's move forward.
Yeah.
And if they say, get the hook, don't do it, then we'll undo it. But let's just assume they're gonna approve it
Okay, great.
for now.
Okay. So, moving down, to the warrants, I've included mostly the language that you have for the warrant section. And it talks about, the warrant language that's in this charter and in most charters talks about when the warrant has to be published. We're not talking about this when, we talked already a little bit about what happens behind the scenes and when articles have to get to the select board in order to be placed in the warrant. This is specifically about what goes in the charter is when it has to be published. We talked about, for a regular town meeting session, it comes out 14 days before. A copy is posted on the town bulletin board at least 14 days before the meeting is convened. And issued by the select board to town meeting members, moderator, and the town clerk. It's vague about how it's issued to the town meeting members, moderator and town clerk. And you know, we can talk more in bylaws about how those are handed out. I know in a lot of towns there are a certain number of copies are made and they're put in a location, central location, like the police department. Where
We send them to everybody.
Right, I know you mail them and you may decide, but I probably don't want to revisit all that here, but you may decide that you want to look into a more efficient way or less expensive, but for the purposes of the charter, we're talking, this is just outlining the warrants. You can scroll down, great. And so special town meetings come out 7 days before the date of the special meeting. I just want to note that this is what the legislature passed, but under state law, it's usually the reverse. It's usually 7 days before for regular town meetings and 14 days before for special town meetings, probably because you know it's coming for regular town meetings and special. But you really don't have special town meetings very often, so it's not really an issue. Because you have 3 regular.
Is there a reason why they're not the same?
I think.
Wouldn't it be easier just to make them both 14 days and call it a day? Can you do that?
I think that in this case, they maybe thought, well, maybe it's so special, it's happening so fast, we only want to give them 7 days, but
We've had specials occur within a regular.
right, okay, so, you know, do you want to make them both the same day, the same 14 days? I think that's totally a reasonable option. And
You make them both 7 or make them both 14?
I would say make them both 14.
Yeah. I mean, the warrant is, we need a lot of time to go through the warrant.
Right. And on a special
As I
meeting,
recall,
we're about transparency,
came up
right?
And we wanted to not call the special town meeting, so we were able to do it fast enough that it could occur within the town meeting. And I think that was one of the reasons we had a shorter notice period for the special. Because because if we had to call a notice, it would have cost the town a lot of money. And so it was a money saving type thing.
so in your case, it's to give it a shorter amount of time so you can tuck it into a regular meeting. So maybe, you know, that's your decision about
That-
whether.
that was
to do
what
it as
occurred.
is.
That time, as I remember.
The only time only one I recall, when it was something came up, short fuse. And the only way we could get it in was under a special town meeting.
And I would say that regular town meetings, the warrants and the backup are robust enough that 2 weeks is really a reasonable time and 1 week is not enough for some people.
And then I guess in the interest of, we're supposed to be transparent and all the rest of it, the fact that we're having a special town meeting is 7 days enough notice to get to people, so.
So it's usually one topic, it's not a whole lot to digest.
Okay,
That's what I would think.
okay. So leave it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Other towns, when they have special, they're kind of solving the, doing the same thing that our September and January meetings too. Yeah, we'll have a bunch of articles on, not just one. We've only ever had one issue on.
Actually, can you just go up a couple more? I just wanted to point something out. So that's great. So what goes in the warrant are subjects asked by any elected town meeting member, the moderator, the school committee, 10 or more registered voters. I guess those periods need to turn into commas, or any other person authorized by state law. So you can pull it down. So those are the people who can put things into the regular warrant as opposed to the select. This is what your current special access. The special town meeting sessions include subjects requested in writing by any elected town meeting member, the moderator, the school committee, or any other person authorized by state statute or town bylaw, or by 100 registered voters or 10% of the total number of registered voters of the town, whichever is lesser. So once a town, there's actually, I don't want to get you too confused because you don't, but for special town meeting sessions, if 100 registered voters can put an item in the warrant, they still have to comply with all the other time limits. But just pointing out, this is the language you have, and that's pretty, it's, the state law allows 100 registered voters to put an item on a town meeting agenda. It requires 200 to call the town meeting, but 100 to put it on the agenda.
Why is the barrier higher on special meeting than on regular meeting? Because up above, doesn't that say, maybe I'm reading something wrong paragraph, isn't that 10 or more registered voters?
Yeah, that's what you have. It's because of the time and cost and I mean, you know, creating a special town meeting.
Special is more special. Requires more.
It's not just part of the regular course of business. It's something over and above. Okay, so we can scroll down to the next section. Okay, that was just, we had their discussion. So I want to talk about referendum petitions. We already started this conversation, if you recall. And one of the comments we had was, this is essentially, just for a refresher, referendum petitions occur if there's a final vote of town meeting and a certain number of voters would like this matter to go to a ballot and not necessarily keep the town meeting vote. Within 14 days, a petition signed by, in your case, not less than 5% of the registered voters can ask for a matter to be included on the ballot, potentially overturning a town meeting decision. And we can scroll down a little bit. And then there's all the process about how you get signatures, et cetera, and when it's held, et cetera. So what we had a question on, what you had a question on last time was specifically, you have language in your special act that says an action of representative town meeting shall not be reversed unless 20% of the registered voters of the town shall vote to reverse the vote of representative town meeting, which is a very high threshold since 20% is kind of the norm in local election. So
Just turnout.
just turnout. And so that would mean that you would need, you know, a 20% turnout, they all would have to vote to reverse it. So it is a high threshold. Patrick, if you wouldn't mind, this is where the little chart comes in on the referendum and what other towns do. Are able to pull that up, that would be super.
I think the idea of overturning town meeting, it's got to be something very unusual. Enough that stirred up a huge amount of the populace, so I don't think that 20% is that onerous. Because we don't want people to be overturning and delaying what town meeting decision was, just because a small number of people were able to get 100 signatures.
Right. So let me just show you what the benchmark communities do. Just for your, so that you can, and if you can't pull it up, I can pull it up myself and read it, just read it. There we go. Burlington, this kind of shows both timing, et cetera. So I think the 14 days, you have 14 days for 5% of your voters to petition. I had it figured out how many 5% was, and it's a significant number.
3%.
Some others say, a few say 3%, a couple say 3%, one says 4%, but you actually have to have a certain number from each. So
Then you've got 5%, 5%, 5%. 5%. Wow.
So, let me see, how many voters do you have?
18,000.
So,
900 votes.
about 900. So you need 900 people to petition, which is a significant hurdle. It's not insignificant. So once a matter is put on the ballot, however, and you have 14 days to get 900 people. I think the trend in Massachusetts is to try to give people more time to get these signatures, just to encourage participation. But that, I don't think that you have ever had a referendum, to my knowledge. So, and whether that has not happened because the thresholds are too high, or whether that, people aren't aware of this provision, or just whether, there's not been something that people have been passionate enough to put to the voters. I don't know. But take a look at the voter threshold is where I think the concern came in last time. In Burlington, you have to actually have 20% of voters have to be in favor of overturning
That's of all voters.
of all registered votes. So,
People can vote, but only 15 oppose it, it doesn't matter.
right. And others are more likely to talk about it in terms of participation in the election. So in other words, the purpose of this is to make sure that there's not a quick vote that nobody comes out for. 100 people showed up in reverse town meeting. You need to have 20%, which is kind of in some of these, which is actually, kind of a standard local election turnout is around 20%. So, for example, Dedham is 20% of those who participate. Milford is 25% of the voters must participate. Milton doesn't have a threshold, but they have kind of unusual language about saying, the same proportion. So, for example, if at town meeting it was a 2/3 vote, the election would have to be a 2/3 vote. It's kind of unusual but Reading 20% participate in the election, 15% is in favor of reversing the vote of town meeting, and I believe that's 50% of the total population, the total voters. And the others, and Winchester is 20% of voters voted on the question. I use the language that they used in their act, and sometimes it's a little unclear, but I want it to be precise. So, I guess last time you wanted us to consider moving towards 20% of voters who must participate rather than 20% must actually vote in favor of overturning. I'm happy to answer any questions if you want to have any
What's
discussion.
the difference between,
Say 20% of voters participate, that means 11% of voters going to prefer.
Correct.
this Winchester one, 20% of the voters vote on that question. So if you have it and 20% of the voters participate, but they don't answer the question, then.
Right, they leave it blank.
They leave it blank.
And so, yes.
So that's to get away from that.
That's an option. And so, choosing these thresholds is really an art and not a science. You may want to make it possible to overturn something that's egregious, but you don't want to make it too easy. And I think that very few towns, you can't really define where exactly that is. And so they've tried different methods. The fact remains, very few referendum come to the ballot.
Which of these are representative town meetings and which are open town meetings?
These are all representative town meetings that,
Because an open town meeting can be stacked.
Yep.
And I could see overturning a stacked open town meeting, but I don't want to make it a routine thing for a representative town meeting to be overturned.
And what we have now is pretty much assuring that people can't do it.
Which also, or they have to really care about it, they want to get it done.
But I also don't think it's fair, given that we've also already discussed our representative town meeting is not.
Different problems, right? Separate the problems. If it was perfect, what are the conditions under which we want the escape valve to work? And I think it really comes down to, you've got, I like the bar, personally, I like the bar for the threshold already. Cool. It's a nice long period. You gotta get 5% of all voters.
Yeah.
I think that's an excellent bar. Cool. So that's like, do we even want to talk about it? Okay, now that we're gonna vote, now you get, really what you're asking is there a way that someone could game it or something where fewer voters showed up? You didn't publicize it, you had the election at 7 PM on a, I don't know, weird day or
In
something,
this town, no,
right?
we get all over Facebook.
It's true, right? I mean, there's already other rules that are gonna dictate how the election gets run and all that, so I guess you're in the same place. So then you're just saying, if people cared, they would show up and vote. And if they did not care, they wouldn't show up and vote. So why not let, as long as the vote happened, why not let the vote, at least enough people had to participate in the election to prove that you had a representative sample of the populace. So all right, make it simple. I like Dedham's language because I like the idea of ensuring that when the vote is happening, you didn't like get a drastically underrepresented population to show up. You at least got enough people to show up in the election. If enough people showed up that it represents at least 20%, hey, then they voted. Then you respect the outcome of that vote. As opposed to, I do think it might be very, very high to get essentially every voter who ever votes in Burlington to also vote to right?
Can I throw a tiny, I don't know if it's a wrench. I mean, to me, it sounds like a good idea, but maybe to you guys, you're gonna be like, you're an idiot. What if it were 20% of voters from each precinct have to participate in the election? That way it's more of a full-time unrepresented.
Yeah, but what if they're overturning something that only affects one precinct?
But the body that passed it was a body that represented the whole town. Right? Like one precinct.
Maybe,
Pass a thing.
maybe. I mean, I think about the area where we have naturally occurring, more affordable housing, that those people are not well represented.
And so if it was something benefiting, let's say, well, if it was something benefiting that folks who are living in low income housing and everybody showed up and said, well, this doesn't benefit us, we want to pay taxes.
And maybe.
Or it could be the other way.
Yeah, it could be the other way around.
I mean, this is where what you said, Russ, I think makes a lot of sense, like different problems. I mean, we have to look how many people who are living in those are actually voters, right? And how many are registered to vote, how many are, it's a very complicated problem. What's the turnover in the population? Do they stay? Do they go? They're apartment dwellers.
There's owned.
They're condos.
Are we getting are there any other mechanisms in government that do this based on representation? Like, if we're not doing that anywhere else, why would we do that here?
Yeah, no, yeah, and maybe it's a bad idea. I mean, I think in general, Russ, I agree with you that I like 20% of voters participate, because I do think it's I mean, our average participation is 15% before the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So,
It's 18 to 22.
I know, I track it, but before that, it was 15%.
Thank you, Nikki.
It's just like stagnant for several years. So I think it's a hard sell to get, again, anybody who ever shows up in an election to come and also vote and overturn. And I almost, again, it stacks the deck against a referendum passing, but also stacks the deck against the referendum happening at all, like both of those things.
Well, how many people do you think are gonna vote Friday on Saturday?
Ooh,
Are we gonna give it 20%?
35%, that's my prediction, 35.
35%.
Absolutely,
Now, here is your
absolutely.
controversial issue
Right,
that
yeah.
puts people out.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about this in two, no, just,
Be a bad idea.
yeah, I mean, yeah, looking and seeing what happens.
Right, I mean, it's a really.
Thinking back to the old open town meeting, when there was a rezoning, well, the people in that particular neighborhood came out in droves. Another part of town that didn't even show up.
But they knew less about it probably too. because
They could care less.
neighbors
What
weren't
did they care?
Right.
Right, which is, again, and there are parts of town, like the part that I live in, that a lot of,
Precinct 7,
that
yeah.
precinct 7, where a lot of people don't care what happens in precinct 7, because everybody lives over on the other side of town. So, precinct 7 has to really raise a ruckus to get anybody to pay attention to the issues that we have over in our precinct. So,
Precinct 7 does have a few noisy people.
yeah. So anyhow, just coming back to this, I like the idea, we're gonna have to come back at these things anyhow. I like the idea of, at least for now, going with the participation number. I'm intrigued by the voters who vote on the question.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean,
Yes.
if there was the only thing, I'm just envisioning, there's only one thing on the ballot. So are they showing up and just not turning in an empty ballot?
No, you'll see in the language, you have to vote in a certain number of days unless you've got another election coming up, then you can put it on. So it can be on the ballot in a local election.
Oh, I see.
See, and I think that,
Oh, that's pretty good, yeah.
It's good because the point is you want people to see the question. You not necessarily force them to vote, but you can, it's a higher threshold to say that.
I like Winchester's line. I reject it. I want Winchester's language
yeah,
now because I don't care that they were at the election if other things were happening. Okay, they voted on this one thing.
yeah, right. So
Good job, Winchester.
I would propose we go with Winchester. And then, but let's, after the election, let's put a pin in it. Let's come back and see what happens. We can put, or let's do sealed
Oh, yeah.
bids
I've been taking a nap for a week.
on how many, okay.
Well, I'm gonna have to hear about this offline. But, you guys know I'm
Go to
like-
Facebook.
I can
Yeah,
tell
we
you.
can tell you everything you need.
Yeah.
My curiosity is
Go to the bus.
as well. And
Okay.
okay, so great. So can we go back to the charter?
Let's hear from Patrick. Yeah.
So we're gonna,
Maybe.
so you have the answer to your question.
I
So we
do.
can move on to the next,
Yes.
because I know we want to get through this. So I'm trying to help you.
It's my least favorite thing about meeting control.
Boy, it's covering everything and even more.
Thank you. So we're gonna scroll down a little bit. Okay. Referendum petitions, down. Okay. And the other this following language is just, is from your current special act, and it's pretty typical. It's language of saying, when do you have to have a bylaw? When you have to do things by bylaw and not just by proclamation, or another measure. Fines and penalties, have to be done by bylaws. Rules governing the granting, renewing, or extension of a franchise or license you have in, by bylaw. So those are the rules governing the granting, not the actual issuing of licenses. Amending or repealing any bylaw previously adopted, establishing standing committees of the town meeting, but not temporary or ad hoc committees. Has to be done by bylaw, establishing all rules, regulations, orders, and votes of the town meeting, which are intended to be permanent and which, when adopted, regard or affect the community as a whole. So, permanent rules, regulations, orders, and votes of town meeting done by bylaw. And
I, So that granting, renewing, and extension of franchise or license, those are the rules for that are in a bylaw.
So for example, under what circumstances can you issue, permits for life? That has to be done by.
Okay.
The moderator shall have the authority to direct that a proposed action to be taken shall be done in the nature of a bylaw rather than in some other form when the moderator's discretion to do so. So the moderator kind of gets, as the moderator gets to say, no, this is really the subject of a bylaw. We're not just having a vote on whatever the town meeting is asked about. Okay. Every
Is
proposed.
that normal?
It's in your charter, in your special act rather. It's not really something I've seen a lot in charters, but it's also within the moderator's purview to kind of make decisions on procedural issues. So, it's not a huge surprise. It might be more, a point of order issue that a town moderator would rule on.
Are you good with it?
Every bylaw has to be introduced in writing. No proposed bylaw contains more than one subject, so just general rules about it. The town meeting may adopt any standard code. This is kind of an oddity that it's in there, but basically what this means, the town meeting can adopt any standard code of technical regulations in whole or in part by reference, but put a copy in the thing. So for example, you want to put in a zoning provision that zoning rules have to comply with the state code. You can adopt the state code and in its entirety without, and keep a copy
Printing the whole
without
thing.
printing the whole thing out. Right, exactly. And the next section, 2017, the town can require the attendance of a town meeting or elected appointed officer, board, committee for the purposes of providing information at the meetings. So for example, you can, the town meeting can order or require, somebody, the treasurer and help and, to give information regarding a warrant article. And the head of the department holds themselves available or designates a deputy. This is fairly standard, but that's what's currently in your special act.
Bill, would you comment on the word resolution there? Which the AG says we can't do resolution, so it has to be something that's not made up of a meeting, but it's on the warrant. First word, second line.
The town meeting or a duly authorized subcommittee of the town meeting by order or resolution may require the attendance of a town meeting. Do you have any comments on that part?
In order to come before a town meeting, it has to be on the warrant. Can't come up if it's not on the warrant.
This is really about compelling attendance, though, right?
Right.
Attendance of somebody that's not a town meeting.
So town,
Elected, appointed.
town admin.
So it's not about an article, what's being introduced for content. It's really who you are going to insist show up. I mean, yeah.
So we were taking action on having the presence of somebody, even though there wasn't a warrant article authorizing them to do that.
We're just telling them to be.
Right.
We've got a warrant article.
But if it wasn't on the warrant, it's not noticed that we were going to do that. That's the jump, that's the of the Saugus decision the AGA gave us.
If it's in the charter, though, that town meeting can compel people to come. It doesn't.
So we can put something in the charter that allows us to break state law.
Well,
As long as it's in the charter, we can do anything we want.
The charter gets approved by the state, that's true. Then you're not breaking state law, you're fine.
It's just separate conversations, though.
Understand what the issue is here.
Yeah, I was being pedantic.
This is talking about we can
I think that's
require,
the question, because Bill's gonna have to make a decision.
we can require somebody to show up. We can say, we want the finance person from the schools and the superintendent of schools to come to the January meeting.
Because they have an article that's on the warrant, they need to present on it.
But this language is indicating how that's done. And I think their point is the how doesn't make sense because if I'm understanding you correctly, town meeting cannot pass resolutions?
Correct. We were told as of, what, a year and a half ago, Bill?
Unless they're on the warrant.
Can the town meeting pass an order? What is an order?
Yeah, and how does that get passed by town meeting before the compulsion of the attendance, because they haven't met yet? Does that language need to be there?
A duly authorized subcommittee, can they pass a resolution or an order?
So like the Ways and Means Committee could, by pass an order to tell the town accountant to be at a meeting,
Right,
to be at the town meeting.
right.
Is that an order that people, like, I don't know, is this something that
Need
happens?
to.
Can we just say,
They staff them and they come.
yeah,
This has never been an issue.
yeah, can we
So
just take out by order a resolution?
Or we
Else
can-
it says town meeting has subpoena power.
We do. That was very different and under a very particular circumstance,
Well,
which is about an
an
investigation.
Maybe do you think that this has to be in there at all, this whole section?
Well, I think that the head of each department shall hold themselves available for attendance. I think that town meeting can request somebody to come to town meeting. I think, yes.
It seems useful.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely,
Says them or their delegate or their designate.
right, right. But I think it's the language by order or resolution.
Can we just strike that?
Or you can say may request the attendance?
There you
or
go.
should we-
Can we say, we can't say we can require attendance?
Yeah, leave it vague.
we can say require it, leave out order.
Yeah, leave out by order or
Town meeting may require the attendances.
town meeting may require the attendance of a town meeting.
Then you'd like to appoint it, just take out by order of resolution.
And then take out of a town meeting. Right?
Well, I think it's like at.
It's at a, not of a,
Yeah.
at a. Yeah.
So in case there's someone who's being a pain, in the ring, doesn't show.
Is it, can the moderator
Which can,
request that, well, but this is only the body that is the town meeting, presumably through some sort of vote, or a subcommittee of the town meeting. I'm wondering,
So then no.
okay, I mean, I guess it's fine. It's fine. We don't need to give more.
okay,
What's a duly authorized subcommittee?
so we're getting rid of by order or resolution and changing attendance at a town meeting, not.
I just roll on small details. You're throwing up there and I'm gonna ask you what it means.
Yeah, duly authorized subcommittee is a question.
What's it unauthorized?
Be-
What's it authorized? I don't know.
Oh, well, I'll tell you, there are sometimes, there could be a group of town meeting members that band together on an issue, but they're not, it's
It's
not
an
like,
ad hoc committee.
it's an ad, they form
The
themselves.
hoc committees are appointed.
Okay.
They just have they're not a standing committee. They have something to do, time to do it. And when they finish what they were supposed to do, they disappear.
So this would be it needs to be an authorized subcommittee, because otherwise you get people who, I don't know.
So it should
Because
be-
Jack's acting,
it's duly standing committee or whatever we call ours.
how do we do?
This also mentions, I think my understanding of duly authorized would be there a standing committee or an ad hoc committee, because what if it was an ad hoc committee on, electronic voting? That's exactly what I was thinking. And you have this ad hoc committee and they want to have the IT guy come and find out if this can be. So by authorized, it's authorized by bylaw or charter. So we could maybe, or a subcommittee authorized by,
Typically, that thing is done at their committee meeting and then the committee reports the town meeting.
So what makes a duly authorized subcommittee is something that's like the moderator appoints them all.
Right.
Right? So it's a committee that's been appointed,
Established. It
established.
should be established.
This
by-
is we're sitting on the ad hoc committee right here.
Right.
Mm.
It could be ad hoc or a standing committee.
This one isn't appointed by the moderator.
No, that's true.
But this is a subcommittee of the town meeting. We're not a subcommittee. of the town meeting. We're-
So all the subcommittees of town meeting are appointed by the moderator, right?
Oh, that's a good point. Just say of the town meeting.
Right,
Right.
So I think, I mean, if,
Rather than duly authorized.
Let me just say a subcommittee.
Or,
Standing or ad hoc committee.
mhm.
Want to go through and read any more phrases or just properly?
I mean, it's the last one, so
straight, go
this is
for it.
the end of it.
So, and I
Yeah.
guess the point where I found this unclear, and I think Jack, you pointed this out, is that it is saying requiring the attendance at town meeting. But can the subcommittees require the attendance at their some understanding? But we don't have to go there.
But that's not what they're talking about here.
Yeah, that's not-
That's a different issue.
Yeah, did that here, okay, and they have to give 7 days notice. That's the last one. And that means we've been through this section once, and it doesn't mean we won't see it again. I'm gonna go back and make some additional changes. We're gonna make some formatting changes.
So when you do that, I'd like if you could send me a
Clean copy.
updated, a clean copy, organized as you and I had discussed before. And so that way we can each have our own, I'll send it out to everybody. You have a clean copy, which as we learn things, let's keep it as an ongoing, mark things up as we go. Because when we come back at it, we're going to want to come back at it thoroughly and once. So is my thought. So just keep a running tally as you do that. Okay, let's Pat.
Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left. My next task would be to introduce you a little bit to the executive branch. Is that something that you want to keep going? Great.
Can we reserve though 5 minutes to go over?
Yes, we have 5 minutes that we need. How much time do you need?
Well, no, I have a longer, I mean, I will take as much time as you give me, or I cannot start.
Maybe we just. Okay, why don't we do this? I'm going to hand out, everybody has an org chart, correct?
Maybe I can just have 5 minutes to talk about what we're gonna do next. and-
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So why don't you talk about what you're going to do and then we'll come back at the final part of it. I'm going to hand out something that you're not going to read right now. Although I know you're going to be hard to manage on this. So this is homework and Pat's going to talk about it. So you have that. Then you have the org chart. Everybody should have the new org chart that does not have heat on it, which is just easier to read than the one that we want it.
So, you don't have to put the PowerPoint presentation on it. I just wanted to introduce what we're gonna talk about next. We're gonna talk about the executive branch. And
Not supposed to read it.
Put it down.
I read the first of the last sentence, that's all I need.
yes.
It's an undated document.
Well, it is specifically dated. It is the chapter 549 of the Acts of 1978. Is that not titled?
Approved July 20th, 1978.
So, what we're going to be talking about next is the executive branch, but we're going to start with the select board and their duties. We're going to talk a little bit about which departments they have, which is one of the reasons we gave out the org chart. Now, I want to make it very clear that just because a line is drawn in a certain way on this org chart, that does not mean that that's what the special acts say or the bylaws say, et cetera, but we're gonna go, but I mean, this is, you know, this is fairly comprehensive and it works fairly well. It doesn't necessarily have all, you know, there might be dotted lines that I would add in different places. But this is for you to understand an overview of it. But we're going to be talking about the executive branch, primarily starting with the select board. And then we're going to move into a discussion of the town administrator and how the select board and town administrators share their authority and what authorities are given to the town administrator versus kept with the select board,
As it exists today.
as it exists
And then
today.
we'll bookmark 90 minutes to talk about town administrator versus town manager.
Yeah, we're going to have some, we're definitely going to be having a talk about town administration, and we will. I want to kind of lay the framework for what is first, and then we're definitely going to go into the talking about what, the differences between town manager, the range, the spectrum of differences between town manager and town administrator and town manager.
Just a comment on that
Sure.
is that Town of Reading has a job description for their town manager, which I found really helpful as I was trying to take a look at what our town administrator is responsible for and what a town manager might be. It's not perfect. It doesn't necessarily line up, but it gives you an idea of where some of those things could cross over. I'm sure other towns, Winchester or some of the other towns as well, we find something, but I thought this was really well laid out. And so if you're looking for an example to compare the town administrator with its,
My understanding is the label is not important, it's the definitions of job.
That's what I was gonna say. It's the case.
well, yes, but no.
Some respect, but it counts when it comes to attracting people into the position.
And
So is there a
compensation.
standard in the parlance?
It means as opposed to finance committee, huh? Fancy title.
If there, I've done a little bit of research just on the compensation side. So there is a pay difference between administrator generally and the town manager. And this is generally, there are some towns that don't call their people either. I think it's Wayland or one of those fancy towns.
Well, it's like,
But is
they
the
call
pay
it
difference because the
executive
job responsibilities are different or requirements are different? or is
The
pay different?
responsibilities are definitely different.
Okay, so are the responsibilities different because the term has meaning? Or are the responsibilities different because two different towns are looking for two different things?
I think you should assume that the terms have meaning, given, I mean, just what I've seen so far, that in terms of level of responsibility, which compensation usually follows that, right? So
Terms used to have some clear meaning, but no longer do.
I don't agree with that. No, and I think it's all over the place in terms of titling, but there, from what I've seen, and mine's limited, and Pat can correct me, it appears that a town manager has more, their scope of responsibility and authority is greater than in general. That's not every case, but that's kind of in general, and I think that's, and compensation tends to be more. But, you can, that's just from, I mean, I've looked at 4 towns, so mine is a survey of very small number.
I think you're both right. I think that there's no legal line, and then there's no bright line between a town manager and a town administrator. There's going to be a range. I think you're both right in that. I think that the term town manager sometimes can attract, using the term town manager implies a level of responsibility that may attract certain people to that position. And along with, adding more salary to that.
And scope of
So
responsibility is more.
there tends to be, the use of the term town manager tends to mean a stronger town manager.
That's what I've heard. The other two strong and limited.
Right. Exactly. But it's definitely a range and it's not a black and white line. But using that term can attract a different candidate than using the term town administrator because of just the number of people, the number of positions in each bucket. But so we're going to take a look at that. I've given you the act for our town administrator so you can get an idea of what, at least by the act, the job duties are. And when I say job duties, this is what they are authorized under the charter to do. And we're really going to be looking at that bare bones level. There are going to be, those duties are generally going to be in a job description. So that's where looking at a job description can be helpful. A lot of other duties are going to be in a job description too that we're not going to cover. This isn't going to be an instruction manual. When we put together a charter, it's going to be an outline of, who's doing what duties, who has appointing authority, how are appointments confirmed, et cetera, and how do they share their authority with the select.
Should we be looking at the select board's responsibilities as outlined in the bylaws currently?
Yes, you can. Personally, I find the bylaws are unclear on that, and that's part of my presentation.
Okay.
So I will tell you those because I think it's not very easy to just read the bylaws and say, this is what this is.
Generally speaking, how you've dealt with is the description of the town manager, town administrator in the charter.
Yes.
So the select board may ask for what they want, but town meeting may not, or the state may not agree.
Do you mean, I'm not sure what you
Well,
want.
first of all, the select board's not asking us to do anything. We're putting together what we think is what it should be for Berlin.
If the description of the duties and powers and authority of the town manager, administrator is in the charter,
Right.
then the select board can't deviate from that. When they appoint that person.
They have, well, correct. And that is why it's definitely when towns are looking at hiring a new town administrator or town manager, it's helpful for the town manager to know, what kind of authority am I going to have? They can look at the charter. They know that any contract that's made is going to take away this authority or change certain things. However, as a result, what's in the charter is going to be fairly bare bones. It's going to be the minimal. This is, these are these duties. The town can certainly ask the town manager to do additional. for the
But what's
town-
in the charter is not going to be confining on the select board.
Correct. It's going to be the minimum. It's going to be the floor, but not the ceiling of what they can ask.
Right. I think if you look at some of these other, in the charters of some of these other towns, like the Reading one I mentioned, you can see it goes into quite a lot of specificity, scope of responsibility, authority, even goes into severance packages, which shocked me.
Yeah, and I generally would, and
Oh, you look at your superintendent.
we would not put
They have
that.
seven packages in there.
But I mean, I'm saying in their contracts, one thing, this is a, in their charter, they have it. So I'm just saying, and this was not the only one who did that. So it's the level of specificity is pretty specific. And if you look at through some of these things, you'll see that. Okay, Jess. Well, that was a teaser. Now we're all going to want to come back to the
Yes.
next meeting.
So here's what we've jotted down so far for what are the takeaways from tonight's meeting. Top is recommendations we make in the charter. So the blue button is a signal for change versus the check mark is confirming we want to keep things. So of the three impactful things we discussed as it relates to the charter, we have town meeting voting by visible means versus specificity of standing, the discretion of the moderator. We decided to keep specified number of town meeting members who can be remote and possibly revisit when we get agent feedback. And rename Ways and Means Committee. Recommendation we discussed for the report is review the bylaw to address desired participation from any registered voter or taxpayer at town meeting. Town meeting revisit.
Format review.
The recommendation is that there should be coming out of this whole charter thing.
So we would do a review.
No. This is like, once we present our charter and our
Yep.
report in January 2027,
I'm with you.
We're
So
not-
I'm saying if that's the beginning of the wording for such a recommendation, who are we asking to do the work that we are suggesting? We don't just say it to the sky.
the subcommittee would have to be formed to do so.
Who would be on top of that subcommittee? The town meeting? We're suggesting the town meeting
Review
review.
bylaw to address desired participation from any registered voter or taxpayer at time meeting. I don't understand that.
So this is how we had discussed allowing a registered voter or taxpayer to have a say at town meeting.
Yeah.
How are we going to address this in a way that allows for that to happen?
So I think
Or
we
are
have
we
to,
going to?
I think we have to address this recommendation to town meeting itself. Because town meeting is the one who has they already have a bylaw, which represents their rule, how they're going to allow.
So it would be a town meeting subcommittee.
Sorry, we're not saying whether it would be a committee or a subcommittee, or they stand and make a warrant, or however they do it. What we would recommend, we're saying, hey, town meeting, you should take another look at this because this has been of concern and you have the purview to change it.
I don't think we have, I mean, first of all, I think we were talking about a resident who attends town meeting who wants to speak, right? So I don't think that's clear by the way this is written. It's addressed desired participation. It's like,
By a non-town meeting.
it's participation by a resident. A resident,
By a non-town meeting.
yeah, non-town meeting member at town meeting. So it's,
But how we had it voted or not voted, written originally in the special act is as it pertains to a registered voter or taxpayer, which is why I
okay,
copied
okay,
that link.
okay.
Maybe you could add just as, who is not a town meeting member.
And we're talking about their participation at town meeting. That's the part that was missing, I guess.
Yeah, at town meeting.
At town meeting, okay.
At.
So, and my original point is that the recommendation we're going to make is that the town meeting review its bylaw regarding this.
But to review the bylaw, they have to make it.
I don't care how they do it. They can do it by a vote on the warrant. They can do anything.
Okay, a subcommittee, rules committee is a subcommittee after a meeting.
Well, we could just say town meeting and town meeting decides how they're,
Yeah.
how they're
So
gonna,
we're recommending the town meeting,
yeah, there you go.
discuss and come up with a recommendation.
And then the same thing, you already addressed town meeting, revisit the standing committees to ensure necessity and effectiveness. Updates.
Also, thank you for taking.
I opened my computer and I was like, oh,
Let's see if there's something. I don't know.
Did you decide, that you were interested in changing the referendum?
Yes, I put this for
Temporarily.
next year, because we'll,
Oh, I didn't see that. I'm
because
sorry.
we'll, no, I didn't show it, because we'll discuss this after Saturday's vote. So this is a possible outcome of next meeting.
Question.
can we just set aside a couple minutes at the beginning of the meeting to discuss that before we go into executive so that we can just,
Yeah, I'm not sure we knocked it out.
everybody come prepared with your comments.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
So, I got them.
Anybody opposed?
You?
Okay, thank you, Rich, everybody.